Hello, my avid fans of scary and mystical stories. Today I'm going to tell you a tale you've never heard anywhere, only here and now, so enjoy it while you can. My wife and I decided to rent a small house in the countryside. The next day, after resolving work issues and signing the necessary documents, I shared the idea of going on vacation with my colleagues. Unfortunately, the internet did not find a suitable option in any remote area. To my disappointment, the only options were decrepit shacks at exorbitant prices, as one of my colleagues later found out. However, he did mention a small cottage in the countryside, which he described as an inheritance from his late grandfather. It would have made no sense to sell it because the village was as remote as one could get. We were hesitant to leave it as it was, so every year we discussed the idea, but never decided to make the trip. But this time he wouldn't charge us for the vacation, but asked for a little cleaning in return. I agreed, and shook his hand in a friendly manner. He explained the way and even drew us a map so we wouldn't get lost. By the end of the day I was flying home, eager to share the good news. My wife was equally ecstatic, and we were looking forward to the trip. Oh, the happiness. We didn't rush or hurry. We had a quiet dinner and went to bed, knowing that we wouldn't have to wake up the next day and go to work, wasting time on stifling, disappearing sleep. Sleep would not have come easily had it not been for the thoughts that disturbed us only closer to midnight. Fatigue was taking its toll, knocking me out. I had a nightmare that kept waking me up and making me fall asleep again. I saw a twisted forest with damp, blackened tree trunks, rusty metal monuments, and fallen, half-rotten crosses covered in white mold. When I woke up, I felt completely shattered, and my good mood had vanished. My wife was quietly snoring, facing the wall. I reached out to give her a peck on the cheek, but I recoiled in horror. Instead of my wife, there was a human skeleton covered with a blanket, and large white worms were crawling all over it. I fell out of bed, hitting my head on the nightstand, and lost consciousness. I woke up in my own bed, gasping for air and turning my head towards my wife. Oh, all sorts of things can come in dreams, I thought to myself as I pulled on my pants and t-shirt, feeling weak in the knees. I shuffled to the bathroom to take a cold shower, trying to shake off the lingering effect of that terrible dream that had ruined my mood from the early morning. Get out of your head, I muttered to myself as I sipped hot coffee. It's clear. I won't be watching any nonsense before bed. Otherwise, a heart attack is not far away. How did you sleep, dear? I asked, smiling at her while she looked into my eyes. Well, not particularly great, she replied. I'm having a better morning, though. Don't worry. We've decided to go tomorrow. No need to rush. Put it in your pocket. The month of freedom ahead. Oh, I understand, I said, sipping my hot coffee. Don't worry, I'm feeling better now. All right, we've decided to go tomorrow, so let's not rush. I'll take you shopping, and I'll go to the service center to get the car checked before the trip. But I didn't even make it to the service center. Just a few hundred meters on a straight road, and the tire burst. How is that possible? It happened out of nowhere on a flat road. I almost crashed into the guardrail, but I managed to hit the brakes in time. My heart nearly sank into my stomach. I got out of the car, feeling a bit shaken, like after a wild drinking spree, and my legs were like rubber. I opened the trunk, and I was simply dumbfounded among the car keys. It wasn't there. Oh, damn it, I exclaimed. Where did I put it? I muttered, rummaging through the tools. Did I really throw it away in the garage? There it is. I found it. Feeling a bit relieved, I went to change it after calming down a bit. Time passed. But that's not where the strange events ended. As I pulled up to the store, where my spouse was coming out, I walked towards her to lend a hand, but before I could take a step, I stumbled on a flat surface. With bags in hand, she tumbled down the stairs. I immediately rushed to my beloved, helping her up from the concrete. Thankfully, nothing serious happened, just a minor bruise. And a bruised knee? She laughed. You're such a klutz. My heart nearly sank, and haha, she's still laughing. All right, forget about it. We arrived home, tended to the wounds, and started packing our suitcases. Evening fell, and the street lamps illuminated the city, painting it with nocturnal colors. The traffic hummed like disturbed beehives. We decided to watch a movie, but the anxiety was overwhelming. I can't even remember how it happened, but I woke up from a freezing cold sensation, eyes fixed on the blankets, trying to cover myself. Instead, my hand stumbled upon the edge of a damp wooden box. I opened my eyes, and a scream got stuck in my throat. I was lying in a damp grave inside a rotting wooden coffin. I couldn't even move. My body felt chained, as if my heart was about to burst through my chest. It was so terrifying. In the distant rectangle of the pit, the moon shone, and something stirred beside me. I was trying to reassure myself that it's just a dream, just a horrible dream. I'll wake up any moment now, but it never passed. I couldn't wake up. Meanwhile, behind the pounding of my heart, I heard an unfamiliar beast approaching me. A wave of hot, putrid breath enveloped me as something wet touched my cheek with a slimy tongue. If I could, I would have vomited right there, but all I could do was scream and jump out of bed, drenched in cold sweat. I immediately woke up, my wife bewilderedly waking up beside me. If I could, I would have puked right then and there, right on that creature. But one look was enough to petrify me. It wasn't a creature. No, it was a genuine corpse. There was no skin on its face, just a pale, dampened skull with dark eye sockets wriggling with worms. One of them fell and landed right on my face. That's why I screamed and jumped out of bed, drenched in a cold sweat. Immediately, my startled wife woke up. "What's wrong, honey?" I, still recovering, sat there and looked at her, surveying the room in disbelief, and let out a relieved sigh. Damn, it was some crazy nightmare. It felt like I was in a damp grave, and then a corpse approaches me. Ugh, it was so realistic that I thought my heart was going to give out. Well, forget it. Sasha, calm down. It's just a dream, my wife softly whispered, and embraced me, trying to reassure me. Yet a couple more of those dreams, and I'll lose my mind, I thought to myself, as I lit a cigarette, my trembling fingers. I've never experienced anything like this before. 2 nights in a row. What could it mean? I still didn't know. But when I found out, it was already too late. All right, enough about that. The day has started, my wife lied. Let's focus on loading, packing, and other camping stuff. We won't leave until around noon. According to the map, we had about an 8-hour drive ahead of us to the campsite. Well, at least it won't be boring on a straight road. Just twist the steering wheel, right? But as it turned out, the fleeting road markings had a hypnotic effect, like a lullaby in a baby's crib. About 4 hours into the drive, I started dozing off bit by bit. No wonder they say a straight road is the most dangerous part for a driver. To keep myself awake, we brought along a thermos filled with coffee. As soon as I turned my head to the cup holders to fill my mug with the hot aromatic beverage, a black crow slammed into the windshield and dropped dead. Damn it! I barely held onto the wheel to stay on the road. What the hell? I pulled over to gather my thoughts while my wife, who was sleeping in the passenger seat, woke up, her eyes wide with shock, looking at the lifeless bird lying on the hood. Is that a crow? How did this happen? I muttered. Who knows where it came from? I turned away for a moment, forgot about the coffee, and opened the door, cigarette in hand, to remove the poor bird from the hood. Just as I reached out my hand, snap! The crow pecked at my wrist, leaving me startled. What the hell, you feathered bitch! I stood there dumbfounded, the cigarette falling out of my mouth, as a thin stream of blood trickled down onto the hot pavement. The bird vanished into the bushes by the roadside. Cursing, I opened the rear door to reach for the first aid kit. What happened? My wife asked in a worried voice. Did you see anything through the window? No, I was looking at the GPS, she replied. I was checking how much longer we had to drive. Finally, I retrieved the first aid kit. Let me help you. You'll need a couple of hours to recover, my wife said as she stepped out of the car. Don't worry, I've got it all under control, I responded, wrapping my injured wrist. Let's get going. We don't have all day. Hey, maybe I should drive, she suggested, hugging me. No way. I remember how that ended last time, I chuckled, freeing myself from her embrace. I started the car, and my wife, Nastya, reminded me, Sasha, we don't need to refuel, by the way. Sitting beside me, she glanced at the fuel gauge. Wow, did you learn how to smile? I responded with a smirk and kissed her. Yeah, we should check the GPS. There's a gas station about 30 kilometers ahead. We reached the gas station without any incidents. You have a village nearby, right? I asked the attendant, surprised. Dobroye, I think. No, it's gone. What do you mean, gone? I mean, it's not there anymore. The village disappeared about 30 years ago when the old gamekeeper died. People scattered to the towns from the village. Only the name remains on a rusty sign. You'll see it if you keep going straight on this road. Slightly taken aback by this turn of events, I thanked the man and filled up the tank. I walked back to the car to please my beloved, who was already sitting in the front seat. Hey, do you know what's there in the village we're heading to? I asked, closing the door and buckling my seatbelt. The day disappeared into the horizon. When a rusty metal sign with faded letters appeared and the old tractor tracks replaced the dirt road, that's when we knew we were in the real wilderness. For some reason, my wife said in a hushed voice, "It's so quiet here." No kidding. It's like some forgotten corner. Trying to hide my growing unease in my voice, I replied, "Yeah, some kind of bear's corner." I turned onto an improvised road, soon realizing that it was actually the main street of the abandoned settlement. The dilapidated houses could be counted on one hand, and even those were in a pitiful state, clearly in their last years. The main valuables had long been taken away by the owners or residents from neighboring villages. Some houses were completely absent. It looked as if they had been ripped out of the ground. The roadside and the main street were littered with chunks of foundations and blackened remnants of cooking fences. In the rays of the setting sun, it all looked so desolate, beyond imagination. The slightly open window carried a cool pine scent. "Damn, these fucking bloodsuckers are getting on my nerves," I grumbled, pulling out a spray from the glove compartment. "Back off, you little pests!" I battled the tiny vampires, spraying my skin and clothes while cursing at the little bastards. My wife burst into laughter in the passenger seat. I don't know why, but she always loved it when I cursed, swearing like a sailor. We finally arrived at my colleague's cabin. As darkness fully enveloped the land, a rough, cool night settled in with its forest sounds and hints of a draft infused with the scent of pine resin. It was quite a peculiar place, but we had chosen it ourselves. What can I say now? Finding a flashlight in the darkness proved to be a challenging task. It took me a while to realize I could use the flashlight feature on my phone. That's how we managed to illuminate the path to the cabin, as much as we could see with our flashlights. Entering the house, the feeble glow of an old kerosene lamp greeted us. "Ah, there's our source of light," I said, approaching the table and removing the glass chimney from the lamp. I lit the kerosene and the room filled with a cozy semi-darkness, casting knotted shadows from the old, peculiar furniture in the corners. "Well, that's much better." I surveyed the room. "It's not bad at all. We can relax here," I said with a smile. I glanced at my wife. "Oh, wait. There's no electricity here," she replied, scanning the room. "Oh well, you surely brought a flashlight with you in the shed. We'll go there tomorrow. If not, we'll manage with our own light." "And did you also bring a generator?" she asked in surprise. "Of course, you know me. Can't do without my TV shows," I chuckled. "No kidding. I also unloaded my backpack, feeling the pleasant lightness. Dinner by candlelight is not our style, but with a kerosene lamp, it's just perfect." "Tell me about it. I did the same. Now let's enjoy the evening." The delightful dinners and the unusual atmosphere made their presence felt. After eating, feeling full and energized, we decided to explore the house. There was quite a lot of furniture for such a small cabin, but the dim light of our flashlights didn't allow us to see everything in detail. Soon enough, on the dusty bookshelves, we found an old notebook that turned out to be quite hefty despite its small size. We carried it to the table and with a silent agreement began reading. It turned out to be a handwritten diary. However, there was something strange about it. The language seemed like Russian, but we couldn't quite understand anything. On the yellowed pages, written in black ink, we found the following: "To bury the dead, a suicide, or split the belly with a sharp axe, spill the entrails, sprinkle the interior with rock salt, and stitch it up with dried leather threads. After chopping off the head, impale it on a smoldering aspen stake, and reattach the head." "What kind of nonsense is this?" Nastya exclaimed, her voice trembling as she shrugged her shoulders. "I have no idea. It's some weird nonsense," I replied, flipping the page. "Well, enough of this, darling. Let's go to sleep. I don't understand anything here. It's about injuring the deceased from the black soil graves to the boggy waters with enemies turning black to the roots, oppressing the blood, lifeless putrefaction. Oh, it's nonsense, I'm telling you. My wife didn't finish her sentence before a furious broke loose. Excuse my language, but I can't write those words. Unfamiliar distorted shadows danced outside the windows, seemingly emerging from the ground. They circled the house, tapping their black fingers on the dusty windows. What? What is it? Sasha screamed, gripping my arm tightly. I don't know. I started, getting up from the couch we were sitting on. Meanwhile, shadows danced and hissed outside the windows like giant snakes, and in the stillness of the night, it was eerily audible. Upon closer inspection, I almost had a heart attack. In the moonlight, our car was clearly visible, next to which the earth seemed to have risen. Someone crawled out of it, and my wife immediately fainted. I, on the other hand, almost dropped my jaw in disbelief when something vaguely resembling a person emerged and stared right at me with its lifeless, cloudy eyes. The whole figure was covered in wet, damp soil and began moving towards me. I was dumbfounded, to put it mildly, and was overwhelmed by a sudden shiver from just looking at it. She appeared all broken, like a puppet on hinges, staring directly at me with her cloudy eyes. I stood there, unable to take my eyes off this spectacle. "What the hell is happening here?" I exclaimed, startled by my wife's piercing scream. I turned around and saw her cowering in the corner. "Nastena, dear." I immediately ran to her and embraced her. With a trembling voice, she said, I directed the flashlight towards the hatch and, out of sheer fear, I just sat down on the floor. The light revealed white eyes staring at us from the gap between the cover and the floor. The hope that we would be safe inside the house shattered before our eyes. A chilling giggle echoed, followed by a sharp blow that caused the hatch to detach from its hinges and fall to the side. We watched breathlessly as an old woman crawled out of the cellar, her face charred, her eyes resembling boiled fish eyes. This cackled maliciously and limped towards us, so quickly that the only thing I managed to do was push my wife behind me and throw a stool at her. She tumbled over, hitting the floor and kicking broken glass. Somewhere to the right of us, which made me wet myself, she turned around. She was already halfway through the window. "What the hell are you going to do?" I yelled, grabbing whatever I could find and started bashing the creature wherever I could. Meanwhile, this damn thing kept crawling and crawling, with shadows swirling around the little house, pounding on the walls, and hideous grimaces peering through the windows. The chaos was intensified by the screams of my brave wife, a courageous woman of mine who grabbed a chair and pushed the old hag into the cellar hole. I smashed the intruding creature's head with a poker and quickly rushed to my wife, who was attempting to cover the cellar with the lid. As we sealed the passage with whatever junk we could find, we realized that the first rays of the cold morning sun illuminated the grotesque nocturnal shadows that clearly didn't belong to our house. They dissipated like smoke, leaving behind ink-stained imprints of deformed hands. I stood by the door, holding my wife tightly against me. "But darling, we have to get out of here, and the sooner the better," I said. "What the hell was that, Sasha?" she asked, wiping her face with her palms. "I don't know, dear. I don't know." We stepped out of the house and saw that there was a cemetery nearby. It was peculiar, with wooden crosses all turned upside down. It didn't look like a peasant cemetery. It seemed more like a devilish graveyard. The thought sent shivers down my spine. As we approached the car, something inexplicable happened. Even now, I can't put it into words. The sun, entangled in the branches, began to set. How could it be? It was morning just moments ago. How could it suddenly be late evening? We barely had time to exchange glances when chunks of white shadows started emerging from the forest with a terrifying roar. It was as if the trees themselves were trying to seize us with their gnarled, dry branches. I grabbed my wife's hands and rushed back into the house. She began to sob, entering a state of hysteria, saying, "This place won't let us go. They will take us with them. Everything will be fine, my love. We will find a way out," I muttered, holding her close. And then, with tremendous force, the door started to give way. It felt like it would only take a little more, and it would come crashing into the room. I frantically rummaged around, searching for some means of self-defense, but nothing worthwhile came into my hands. All I could find were broken furniture, rotten wooden stools, and a notebook. And then it hit me. All of this inexplicable madness started after that damn notebook. Holding it in trembling hands, I set the overturned lamp on fire. Oh, what a mess it all turned into. The creatures lurking outside the windows burst into tongues of flame with a hiss, gradually melting away. The pounding on the door subsided as quickly as night had turned into day the last time. Cautiously, We left the house, looking around. In place of the once extensive cemetery, there was a charred, empty space. The dents on the door from our nocturnal adventures reminded me of two deep craters, as if a horse had pounded it with hooves. Constantly glancing back, we made our way to the car and easily drove onto the main road. After that, my wife fell asleep, and we drove in peaceful silence. When we reached the city, we slept for a whole day. I called the guy who sent us to this hell, but he didn't pick up. My wife didn't leave my side, discussing everything that had happened there. We couldn't come to any logical conclusion, and it was only after some time that I learned the horrifying details about our colleague, who handed us this house. My wife discovered him lying in a war filled with his own blood. At work, there had been a lot of gossip, and naturally they considered it suicide. Only one of our colleagues, who knew his family, claimed it was punishment for their involvement in witchcraft. People even started looking at her with puzzlement and distrust. And I had seen it all with my own eyes.